This is a story of Rico and Sammy, two brothers from Lagos and students of Yabatech. They joined rival confraternities, Black Axe and Eiye. Their choices lead to pain, loss, and regret. This story teaches a powerful lesson.
Outside the gates of Yaba College of Technology, Lagos, life holds its own rhythm. The street culture surrounding the campus has long influenced student behavior, what they wear, how they speak, and sometimes what they believe in. For many students, the campus represents opportunity, but the streets outside it introduce another kind of education, one about power, loyalty, and survival. Among the thousands of students moving in and out of Yabatech's environment were two young men, Rico and Sammy. They were both known figures in their respective social circles. Rico was associated with the Black Axe Confraternity, while Sammy identified with the Eiye Confraternity. These two organizations, though existing under the surface of student life, have become significant in shaping the social order around many Nigerian campuses, including Yabatech. The story of Rico and Sammy reflects the complex relationship between youth, identity, and cult influence in Lagos. While the city's culture encourages ambition and self-expression, it also creates an environment where competition for dominance is constant. This rivalry is not limited to academics or business. It extends to underground networks where power is measured by loyalty and control. Rico found his comfort in the Black Axe movement. To him, it represented strength, recognition, and the assurance that he belonged to a system where no one could easily intimidate him. Outside Yabatech, where social structures are blurred and confrontation is frequent, being part of a confraternity can provide protection and a sense of brotherhood. Sammy, however, saw meaning in the Eiye Confraternity. The group positioned itself as one of honor, structure, and discipline, values that appealed to him. The Eiye group has a long-standing reputation for order and the preservation of loyalty among members. Sammy's choice was not about violence, but about belonging to something that offered him stability in the midst of urban uncertainty. Both young men were aware of the history between their confraternities. The rivalry between Black Axe and Eiye Confraternity has existed for years, often erupting in violence across campuses and streets in Nigeria. Despite this, Rico and Sammy maintained a peaceful coexistence. They greeted each other on the street, exchanged respect, and lived by an unspoken rule: personal relationships must not interfere with confraternity identity. Their relationship became a study in contradiction. On one hand, they symbolized the idea that individuals can transcend institutional rivalry. On the other, they stood as reminders of how deep-seated divisions can destroy personal peace. For some time, their peaceful understanding was viewed by observers as maturity, an example that it was possible to coexist even under conflicting affiliations. But as I have observed in many case studies on campus-related confraternity activities, peace in such spaces is fragile. Rival groups often maintain a tense balance, one that can collapse without warning. The unwritten code of loyalty to the group supersedes personal relationships. Once conflict is declared, all members are bound by collective decisions. The streets around Yabatech serve as neutral grounds for different groups, but neutrality in cult structures is temporary. Each confraternity has its own networks, alliances, and enemies. Once tension builds, individuals lose autonomy over choices. Rico and Sammy's understanding could only last as long as their groups permitted. In the broader analysis of cultism in Nigeria, their story highlights how confraternities operate beyond the campus space. The ideology moves into the surrounding community, into the bars, corners, and night gatherings of Yaba and its neighboring streets. Their power and identity merge into an alternative social order. Rico and Sammy stood in that order, both convinced they had found belonging. What they did not realize was that belonging to opposing sides would soon demand a price none of them expected to pay.
Rico's association with the Black Axe Confraternity positioned him within a network that operated with precision, hierarchy, and coded loyalty. The Black Axe group, also known as the Neo-Black Movement, is structured like a military unit. Every member answers to a superior, and each role comes with clear responsibilities. Rico was not at the top of the hierarchy, but he had earned enough respect to be considered a trusted member in the Yaba environment. The Black Axe ideology is rooted in the concept of brotherhood and liberation. To many members, it is presented as a movement against oppression and social inequality. But over time, this ideology has been distorted. It now functions in many cases as a power network competing for dominance against other confraternities. Rico understood this shift. He knew that beyond the talk of equality and unity, there existed a system where violence and intimidation were tools of control. Rico had witnessed confrontations between Black Axe members and rival groups. He understood that every conflict, once started, spread fast and was difficult to contain. Despite this, he stayed committed because leaving the organization was almost impossible. In confraternity culture, loyalty is lifelong. Betrayal or withdrawal is often interpreted as defiance, a punishable offense. As a researcher studying these organizations, one observes that many members like Rico are not driven by evil intent, but by the social systems that trap them, systems built on loyalty, fear, and the illusion of empowerment. Rico was loyal to his group, yet unaware that one day that same loyalty would test his humanity in the most painful way possible.
The Eiye Confraternity, also called the National Association of Air Lords, operates as an organized network with a defined structure and code of conduct. Outside the Yabatech campus, the group maintains active cells across Yaba, Akoka, and Sabo. Their meetings usually take place in concealed locations, such as lounges, uncompleted buildings, or street corners considered safe for members. Sammy became part of the Eiye network through gradual involvement. His introduction came from senior members who educated him about the group's principles, discipline, unity, and order. Eiye operates with strict hierarchy, and every member is answerable to higher authority. Commands are obeyed without argument, and failure to comply attracts sanctions. Sammy accepted this structure and performed his duties as required. The Eiye Confraternity is built around the ideology of brotherhood and discipline, but it is also defined by rivalry. Its long-standing opposition with the Black Axe Confraternity has existed for years, spreading across different campuses and street zones. Both groups compete for influence and control, often resulting in clashes when boundaries are crossed. This rivalry is systematic and not personal. It follows a pattern of dominance and retaliation that operates beyond individual members. Sammy understood the risks, but remained committed to the system he had joined. In confraternity culture, loyalty overrides personal judgment. Once a command is issued, every member is expected to align with the group's interest. Refusal or disobedience can be interpreted as betrayal, and betrayal is not tolerated. From a research standpoint, Sammy represents the average confraternity participant, obedient to structure, consistent in duty, and confined by hierarchy. His focus on stability could not shield him from the consequences of group rivalry. The tension between Eiye and Black Axe was already active across Lagos streets, and individual neutrality could not prevent escalation. Sammy continued to serve within his assigned role, unaware that decisions made at higher levels would soon place him directly in the path of conflict.
Outside the Yabatech environment, Rico and Sammy operated within two opposing confraternities, but both understood the need for restraint. The Black Axe and Eiye confraternities maintained visible presence around Yaba and Akoka, and conflict between the two had a long record. However, Rico and Sammy managed to avoid confrontation. Their interactions were minimal, but respectful. They understood that open hostility could attract unnecessary attention and provoke retaliation from either side. The peace between them was not formal or negotiated. It existed as an unspoken agreement. On the streets surrounding the campus, members of different confraternities often observed one another carefully. A simple argument could escalate into a larger confrontation. Rico and Sammy avoided such contact completely. When they crossed paths, they kept communication brief and focused on neutral topics. From observation, This type of temporary peace is common among confraternity members who share mutual respect. It usually depends on individual discipline rather than organizational control. The Black Axe and Eiye groups, as institutions, did not recognize peace between individuals from rival factions. Their rivalry operated on collective identity. Once conflict started anywhere within their network, it could spread rapidly through retaliation, even if the original issue was unrelated to the parties involved. Both men were aware of this instability. Rico maintained a cautious attitude toward Eiye members, knowing that the Black Axe hierarchy viewed them as competitors. Sammy, on his part, continued to discourage unnecessary discussions about confraternity matters. He preferred to focus on normal street life, staying alert, following his duties, and avoiding conflict zones. However, as confraternity tension increased in Lagos, reports of minor skirmishes began to surface around Akoka. Each clash added to the existing tension between both groups. The peace Rico and Sammy practiced depended on their immediate control, not on the decisions made by higher commands. When orders from superiors changed, individual neutrality lost meaning. In confraternity systems, peace without approval from the hierarchy is temporary. Once the leadership decides on confrontation, every member becomes part of the enforcement process. Rico and Sammy's restraint could not influence the structure that governed them. Their peaceful understanding lasted longer than most, but in a network driven by dominance and retaliation, peace has an expiry date. The situation outside Yabatech was shifting, and both men stood on opposite sides of a rivalry that was preparing to ignite.
The calm around Yaba and Akoka streets did not last. A fight had earlier broken out between members of the Eiye Confraternity and the Black Axe group in another street of Lagos. One Black Axe member was taken down during that clash, and the incident quickly sparked anger among his brothers. Retaliation was expected. In the world of confraternities, revenge is seen as a duty. Soon after the attack, messages began to move through the Black Axe network. Senior members gave a warning that the act would not go unanswered. The instruction was clear. Someone from the Eiye side had to pay for what happened. The order was not based on personal issues, but on the rule of equal response. If one of theirs fell, another must fall. That is how retaliation works in cult systems. In Yaba, Rico and other Black Axe members started hearing about the plan. There were meetings and discussions outside Yabatech, in hidden corners and small bars. Rico did not take part in organizing the attack, but he knew tension was rising. The Eiye group in Yaba also got the news. They began to stay alert, knowing the Black Axe members were planning a strike. Unfortunately, Sammy was among the names mentioned during these discussions. He was an active member of the Eiye Confraternity in the area, and his group had been involved in earlier arguments with Black Axe members. Even though he had no hand in the previous execution, he was marked as part of the retaliation plan. In confraternity systems, decisions are made collectively, not personally. Once an order is approved, it must be carried out. One night, the plan was executed. A small group of Black Axe members waited along a quiet street. When Sammy was spotted, they carried out the attack quickly and left the scene before tension could build. The news spread fast. The Eiye members identified it as a revenge execution and immediately vowed to respond. For Rico, the news hit hard. He could not believe that the same organization he belonged to had taken the life of his own blood brother. But he also understood the rule of retaliation. No emotions, no exceptions. It was a cycle that never ended.
When Rico heard that Sammy had been taken down, he was shocked. The news came from another member who was part of the operation. At first, he refused to believe it. He thought there must have been a mistake. But when more members confirmed it, he realized it was true. His own group, the Black Axe, had carried out the attack that took his brother's life. Rico was filled with anger and confusion. He could not understand how people who called him brother could take down someone who was his real blood. He went to confront some senior members and asked why they did it. Their answer was short. It was an order. They explained that the attack was revenge for a Black Axe member who had been taken down 2 earlier by Eiye men. To them, it was not personal. It was simply a rule of retaliation. Rico tried to argue, but in confraternity culture, questioning an order is seen as disloyalty. Once the command has been carried out, no one is allowed to challenge it. He realized that even though he was angry, there was nothing he could do. The group expected him to stay loyal, no matter how painful the situation was. Inside him, Rico was broken. He started to think about everything, the meetings, the fights, the fear, and the endless cycle of revenge. He remembered how he and Sammy had managed to stay peaceful despite being in rival groups. Now, that peace was gone forever. Rico stopped attending confraternity meetings for a while. He stayed away from the usual gathering points and ignored calls from other members. He was afraid of what he might do if he lost control. Deep inside, he felt guilty for not protecting Sammy. He believed that if he had known about the plan earlier, he could have stopped it. The situation made him see the truth about cult life. He finally understood that no one was truly safe, not even family. In that world, loyalty to the group is stronger than love or friendship. Rico's silence after the incident became noticeable. Some members saw it as weakness, but in reality, it was pain. The kind of pain that only comes when loyalty and blood collide.
After Sammy was removed, the whole Yaba area became tense. The news spread fast among residents. Many people were shocked because Sammy was known to keep to himself and avoid trouble. His downfall created fear and confusion on the streets. Everyone knew it was connected to confraternity issues, but no one wanted to speak openly about it. Inside the Eiye Confraternity, emotions were high. Members were angry and demanded answers. They believed the Black Axe group had crossed a line. Sammy's name started appearing in discussions across different Eiye zones in Lagos. For them, his downfall could not go unanswered. But how they responded is a story for another day. Rico spent days thinking about everything that had happened. He realized that the life of violence and revenge only destroyed people in the end. The same group that once gave him a sense of belonging had now taken away his own blood. That was when he began to see the real truth about cultism. It offers false security and leads only to loss. Street rumors said the Eiye group was planning something big in return. Rico knew what that meant. Once one side strikes, the other side always responds. The cycle never ends. He also knew there was nothing he could do to stop it. What happened next with the Eiye group is a story for another day.
After Sammy's fall, Rico's life changed, but he did not leave the Black Axe. In the world of confraternities, walking away is not an option. Once a person joins, he becomes part of the system for life. The rules are strict, and anyone who tries to leave is seen as a traitor. Rico understood this very well. Life outside the confraternity continued like nothing had happened. The Yaba streets remained busy with students, traders, and commuters. People heard about cult clashes but went on with their daily activities. That is how life works in Lagos. No matter what happens, the city never stops. Inside Rico's mind, however, the picture was different. Every meeting reminded him of Sammy. Every coded handshake or symbol reminded him that his brother's life was part of the same game he still played. But he also knew he had no choice. Cult life doesn't allow emotions. The rule is simple. Once you are in, you stay in. From the outside, it looked like Rico had moved on. But inside, he lived with pain every day. He had accepted that in cult life, there is no pause button. Life goes on, orders continue, and everyone keeps playing their role, no matter who gets hurt along the way.
The story of Rico and Sammy shows that cultism brings nothing good. It may look attractive at the beginning, but in the end, it only destroys lives. Many young people join confraternities because they want power, respect, or protection. Some do it to belong to a group or to feel important. But the truth is, cultism takes away peace, love, and even family. Rico and Sammy both started as ordinary students in Yaba, full of dreams and energy. They wanted to succeed and make something out of life. But once they joined different confraternities, everything changed. Friendship turned into distance, and happiness turned into fear. Though they tried to keep peace,
The rivalry between their groups was bigger than them. When Sammy was taken down, it became clear that cultism does not recognize family or emotions. To the confraternity, he was just another name on the list. To Rico, he was a brother, but even that did not matter. That is how dangerous cult life is. It replaces love with loyalty to violence. In the end, Rico saw how endless the cycle of revenge was. One attack leads to another, and no one truly wins. Young people lose their lives, families lose their sons, and schools lose their students. There is no victory in cultism, only pain, fear, and regret. The lesson here is simple. Cultism is not worth it. It promises power, but gives you danger. It promises brotherhood, but replaces it with betrayal. It may give a sense of belonging for a short time, but it takes away your freedom forever. Once you join, it becomes hard to leave. True strength is not in violence. It is in discipline and self-control. True respect comes from education, good behavior, and focus, not from carrying weapons or living in fear. Many people who once joined confraternities now live with regrets, wishing they had chosen differently. Rico's story teaches us that peace is far better than power, and wisdom is greater than revenge. The best choice any student or young person can make is to stay far away from cultism. It doesn't build, it only destroys. Let this be a reminder that life is precious and peace is priceless. This content is for educational purposes only. We don't support cultism or violence.